Yeah, so thank you very much. It was great to have you all yesterday, and now for you to be here today. Today is an opportunity for you to hear from some experts about what they look for in a pitch and how to present. I just wanted to add a couple of points before I hand it over to Rachel, our general manager, who's going to facilitate today, is that just remember to have fun with a pitch, because the most important thing is to have fun, not to get too hung up about it. Recognize that no one actually knows your pitch. So you can make a mistake as long as you don't look like you made a mistake. No one's going to know it. So just keep going and have lots and lots of fun. A couple other things. We are getting together a whole lot of resources, and we'll be sending it out to you about pitching, about pitch decks, about teasers, about a whole lot of different things. So that will go to you probably on Monday. And then you can use that as a way for you to be able to read up and get yourself better prepared. Your mentors will be getting in touch with you. So hopefully you've already had contact. If you haven't, it will happen pretty soon. Please feel free to get in touch with us if you need anything. But the mentors are a really good place for you to go to get some advice, for the mentors to be able to share with you, because they've all been very gracious and they all want to help. Couple of things that I just wanted to outline. This year, I think that what we're going to ask you to do, apart from those of you who want to pitch live in New Zealand, who are in New Zealand, it'll be good for you to actually record your entire pitch, including your audiovisual presentation. That way you can utilize it later on to show other people. At the same time, for those decision makers that can't be there or haven't been able to listen to your pitch, they have an opportunity to observe your pitch as well. So we'll give you some directions as to what to do. So without any further ado, I'm really pleased to introduce Rachael Penman, our general manager. Rachel's really experienced in the area of both performing arts as well as the screen arts, and she's had the pleasure of actually presenting and listening to pitches for a number of years. So she's going to help facilitate this session. If there are any other questions later on, please feel free to let Rachel or Belle know, and we'll make sure that we get them answered. Okay, and good luck, everyone. Enjoy today, and thank you very much for being part of this.
Kia ora, thank you, Alex, and welcome everybody from right around the world. There's some names that I know there, which is great to see you here this afternoon. And yes, as Alex said, I've had the opportunity of pitching quite often myself as well, live, and know those butterflies and those feelings of finishing a pitch and realizing you don't even know what you said. So that's why we're here today, to just really answer all those questions, help support where you're going and what you're doing, and please do feel free to ask anything of our presenters here today. We're here to help. So first I'd like to introduce you to our Doc-Age ambassador, actually, Neil Waka. And Neil began his journalism career in radio, and in his early 20s became one of the first Māori to become a television news anchor in New Zealand, spending more than a decade presenting news and various other programs at TV3 before taking his talents to One News at TVNZ. Neil has travelled the world covering stories for New Zealand and television, and after more than 22 years, left broadcasting for a career in the corporate world, working for 2 global organisations over 2 years before being lured back to the newsroom by Whakata Māori Television to present Tapatahi, a news interview show, which you're still doing now, Neil, and we welcome you to here to speak to our guests today about the art of interviewing.
Hi, kia ora. It's great to be here. Hey, Kim, Webby, good to see you. Haven't seen you for a very long time. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the experience that I've had. Clearly, I'm not a great expert when it comes to presenting for documentaries, but the place I have been able to gain, I guess, some experience around is either at an executive meeting, proposals to change or processes, increase engagement for organizations presenting television, obviously, and through news stories that I've covered. I've also listened to a lot of presentations by various sources, from job seekers to agencies to organizations and government representatives. So through that process, I try to learn as much as I can to help me understand the way people's minds think sometimes. So anyone that is looking for some kind of support requires a few things that are crucial in my mind to achieving some kind of successful outcome. And it may not always be that. We may not always achieve the outcome that we hope for or are dying for. Remembering that much of our lives we're presenting in some form or another anyway. It's obvious, it's an obvious idea that we have, and we think other people should understand it. Sometimes they don't. Changing processes, negotiating an advantage, or applying for a job. Okay, a few of the ideas that I thought I'd speak to is, one is, I've always felt that connection is one of the crucial aspects of any kind of presentation, any kind of engagement. Primarily being able to connect with those you're presenting to rather than seeing them as robots or AI, although that's going to become more obvious a little bit in the next few years where we might be doing that. I'm not sure. We view people as human beings. We view them as people that are in a position to make decisions that may affect us in a positive way, but may not necessarily. So I've always felt that connection is kind of crucial for us to be able to speak to what's important to us. And I'm guessing that through the documentaries that everyone's involved in or wanting to be involved in, the topics that you decide are not random, and they're topics that are really important to you, and being able to potentially connect with people you're presenting to is going to be important. Engagement, this goes on with the connection, engaging with those we're presenting to. Look, I've got this sort of failed actor thing that I just tried for a very minute period of time, and I realized how terrible I was when I'd be playing off people and I forgot my lines because I'm looking at them thinking, wow, this is so amazing. I realized then that wasn't the thing for me because I got distracted very easy. So engaging with people is an important aspect to why we're presenting, what we're presenting, and supporting the ideas that we have. Now, if you're not successful, as I alluded to earlier, it may simply mean it wasn't meant to be at this time, but laying the foundations for our next engagement has to be important. Authenticity, being yourself and not afraid to be yourself, I think is really important. When I've interviewed people, when they've come to me for jobs, I like seeing who the real person is. And this is not telling you anything. I'm sure you all are very familiar with this, but it's something I realized when interviewing certain people and found that they were trying to be the people they thought I wanted them to be. And so I feel if we're presenting an idea for a documentary and it's not important to us, and we can't project the ideas that we have and the importance of this particular topic, there may be some kind of obstacle to us gaining what we're trying to look for. I think it's important also to be able to translate who we are to a wider audience, because sometimes it's about the people who are producing, sometimes it's about the people who are presenting, and I think that adds to it. We just saw the documentary Unredacted the other day. I saw it again and got to speak with Meg Smaker again, and realized how important all the aspects of her documentary were to her. And it was surreptitious, really, because she was meant to do this documentary because few other people were going to be able to do it. Few people have gone to live. Where did she go to live? She went to live in the Middle East somewhere.
She lived in Yemen for 5
In
years.
Yemen. She went to live in Yemen, so learned how to speak Arabic, the Yemeni Arabic. So all of a sudden, when she got speaking with these guys who were in Guantanamo Bay, the Yemenis were blown away by not only an un-Arabic person, but a blonde American going and speaking to them. And that helped her and her authenticity to be able to engage with them and for them to be able to open up. And I thought that was pretty important. and being comfortable with who we are. I think there might be some people who are potentially heading into this kind of area and just aren't sure who they should be. And that's all I can say, just be who you are, but be nice. Preparation, understanding a topic back to front. If I ever got asked about a topic that I'm supposed to be on top of and asked questions I have no idea about, it could be the fact that we just haven't done the work that we needed to. We haven't gone in depth, but I feel that in our preparation, everything has to be set up so we know it as much as we can from back to front whenever I've done a story. I have, in my earlier days, I've gone to a producer and I said, this is the story that I want to, and they go, well, what about this? And I'll go, well, no, I want my stories. And so if I got really too caught up in what I felt was right, but had no purpose for it, then I think that can always be an issue. I've always felt, and I'm not sure how some of you feel about this, that we should avoid being too emotional in our presentations, because I can see where some presentations, or rather some topics, can be quite emotive. But I feel that, and I could be wrong, but I feel that if we utilize, if we believe that this is what we should be doing, if we believe in ourselves and we feel emotional about it, that can really take away from what they're trying to understand. Because I guess we're going to them for the first time with information about what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to achieve. And I've always felt that if we just try to keep the emotion in check for the time being, I think it can help us to connect with the topic that we're trying to talk to. And this is one that where I think we're all familiar with over the last couple of years, and that's just be nice. Particularly if we're in an environment where, okay, so when I started in radio, one of the first things one of the senior announcers said to me is, no one cares if you've had a hard day. No one cares if you're not feeling well. No one cares if you just had an argument with someone. And so we don't often know what's happened to the people we're presenting to, what kinds of lives they're in. And so I think it's always important to be aware of people, to be nice to people, even if our ideas aren't good enough or our topic's not good enough this time. I think it's always good to be nice, because if we believe in what we're doing, and remember also that not everyone can see our vision. And it could be the fact that we haven't prepared that vision, or it could be the fact they're just not seeing it. But it doesn't mean, if we believe in it, then we should be pursuing that a little bit more. I feel we shouldn't give up. If we have a good idea, as I was just alluding to, if we have a good idea yesterday, we feel it's important, that should potentially be a good idea today. And not everyone will see that, but it doesn't mean it's not a good idea. I think Meg, to use her as an example again, went through 50, 60, whatever, financial backers to try and get support. And a lot of people didn't see it. They didn't see her for that particular role. They didn't see her going into it. They wanted someone else and all this type of thing. So because it's not accepted, it doesn't mean that you should stop what you're doing. And I think the authenticity around that is kind of important. So that, look, happy for any questions. They were just some of the ideas that I considered. That there are more, obviously, but there I thought it'd be interesting to allow other people, you know, experts to talk to theirs. But happy for any questions.
Neil, I think that what you said about Meg as well, you're absolutely right. Here she was pitching to get finance for her documentary, and one of those financiers suggested that it's a great documentary, but it would be better without her at the helm.
Yeah.
And she stood by what she wanted to do, knowing that she would be the right person for that project. And obviously we've seen their fantastic documentary that is the outcome of that, and knowing that she absolutely was the right person for the job. So it's standing by your beliefs as well.
And going into this, you realize that through her, hearing her and others, not everyone's going to see that vision. they won't see that vision. And a lot of the time she was in, and I guess I'm hearing more and more of this, she had to put as much of her finances on the line as possible because she believed in the veracity, she believed in what she was trying to accomplish. So if it's a strong enough topic to talk to, then I think you should seriously consider moving along with that as far as you can, because not everyone's going to finance, not everyone's going to back, and I from what I've learned over the last little while being with Doc Edge, things can be really tough. So if we're not really embedded, if we're not really involved in the topic and what we want to do, then I guess not a lot of people will stay necessarily.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It can be hard.
Yeah, and absolutely, and thank you for talking about your little bit of foray with the acting there, Neil. I'll be interested to find out a little bit more about it. What that was
useless. Useless.
But I think absolutely, we've got to remember here as well, we are life unscripted as we are documentary makers, and it is about unscripting and which directions we go. So again, just making sure we're not going in there going, right, this is what I must say, this is what I must do. Just really feeling the unscripted nature of the room and feeling the ability to move and grow with the questions that are given to you as well.
Can I just take a short break? My dog is causing a problem and I don't want him to be disrupted.
Come and bring him up so we can say hello. You go and sort that.
Excuse me for a moment, sorry.
Absolutely. Great to see so many more of you joining us here as well. I'm going to introduce, while we've got the chance, we're going to bring out Sacha Handsaker, who is also going to help us talk through some things today. Now, Sacha is out at she's currently heading up the documentary and research department at South Seas, and Sacha enjoys helping her students realise their potential and getting their stories up on the big screen. And Sacha also comes from experience both behind and in front of the camera, so can talk to us about both of those. Belle and I were fortunate to be out at South Seas just a couple of days ago, talking to the students about everything Doc Edge and about projects that are coming up and ways we can work together. And it was really great to see a diverse lot of students coming through with some really exciting projects and really great energy out there as well, Sacha, coming through. So welcome.
Might help if I unmute myself. Kia ora tātou. Hello, nice to see you all. First of all, congratulations on getting this far with all, I'm sure, absolutely fantastic ideas. So now it's a matter of, putting those beautiful ideas out there and seeing if we can get some remuneration. I think it's a really good point that Neil made about, this is just one journey and, like one presentation, I'm sure, of many. But it's really interesting from my perspective with students. And we have a real age range. We've got students, some as young as 17, 18, all the way through to some 40-year-olds. And we're pretty blessed to have that opportunity that these students are able to pitch ideas that are from their heart. They're not trying to necessarily, meet a specific brief as their final project. It has to be a short film, it's a short form documentary. But we always take it right back to, first and foremost, why are you the best person to tell the story? So it's interesting, and I understand what Neil's saying about the emotion, because it's true, there's a fine line, but I do actually think there's something to be said for showing your passion for a story, because I think if you're passionate about it and you really feel it needs to be told, that's going to come across. And this is something I talk to my students to all the time, like if they're like, trying to inspire a crew, for example, or trying to get, other people on board with your ideas, if you don't seem to care, what's the point? So you know what I mean? So I think it's so important to really figure out why you're the best person to tell that story. I mean, Neil covered off a lot of what sort of stuff I was going to talk about, but one thing I think is really important is when you've got your idea and you're thinking about how you now want to present it. We talk about, we call it querying your pitch. So we start to break it right down into the basics of things like, do you have unrestricted access to locations and all your talent? I'm sure you probably are past the stage, but just in case, if you're still milling it out, we have things like, who is your talent? And I hate the word talent because they're not talent, they're real life people. So I like to call them subjects, not people. We talk about, the visuals, the story in terms of a beginning, middle, and an end. Stylistically, what kind of story are you trying to tell? How do you, what do you want the story to say to your viewers, and how do you want to tell them? Do you know what I mean? Are you going to be doing, I don't know, reenactments, or is it a lot of talking heads, or is it a lot of live footage, or verite, or are you thinking about animation? So how are you going to tell the story? So just all these things to make sure that you're very solid with your story and how you want to do it before you start to actually put your pitch together. Because inevitably you'll, depending on how long your pitch is, you'll have a whole lot of questions that come at you afterwards. And I'm sure, like most people, you've probably slept and breathed and lived with this baby for a very long time, and it's incredibly important. So you probably know it just like a mother, better than anyone else. But it's good to be prepared for lots of different questions that might come at you. The other thing I talk to my students a lot about is knowing who you're pitching to. Obviously, it's really important to know who your audience is, what they're after, i.e. their brief, who are they, what do they do, so that you're, making sure that you're talking to the right person as such. I'm just trying to think. Oh yeah, always obviously important. I mean, you can have a working title, and we call them a tagline, having all that little information about your synopsis and all those, the things that go along with it that you could potentially hand out after you've pitched. To be honest with you, and I don't know, it's so funny working at a media school, for some reason, trying to get technology to work in a media school seems to be harder than anything. So I'm always trying to discourage people using slides and things. But obviously, individual, particularly potentially if you're doing this online, if you've got a teaser or something, awesome. But just be aware of that. And I think just to go with the flow, that when stuff goes sideways, as it inevitably does, and technology goes whoop on you, not to panic. Do you know what I mean? Just to take a deep breath.
It's
Start
actually
again.
an opportunity to step back, isn't it, Sacha?
Yeah.
I remember doing a pitch once in Australia and was waiting for my slideshow to come on. I'd given it a couple of days ago to the presentations, and it was somebody else's presentation that I started speaking to. So, you just got to go, okay, hang on, this is time for me to go gather my thoughts, ask questions. Where are you going? Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think you've got to remember we're all human too. Do you know what I mean? And I actually think when you're a little bit vulnerable in that you could go, oh, that was a mistake, or sorry, I'm actually feeling a little bit nervous. Just give me a breath. As an audience, or as, the people you're pitching to, I am more than, certain they'd be like, it's cool. We've got you. You're okay. Carry on. And it's so true what Neil said. No one knows, you know what I mean? Nobody else knows your pitch other than you do. So if you fluff up, you fluff up. Hey, so I think that's really important to remember, just to take a deep breath and just, step back into it. We really encourage, obviously, knowing your pitch off by heart as best you can, if possible, and if not, have some pointer notes. But I think people are so much more engaged if you've got a bit of eye contact going, if you're in the room with people, or even if you're online that you're talking to somebody, because, I have students who sometimes stand up like this. And I can get why, totally and utterly, but it's so distracting. Even the best story just gets lost behind, you know what I mean? The paper and things. And it's funny because last year, because what happens is our guys, they pitch every story they do, and at the end they have to do this 15-minute final project. And we get an industry panel of experts, like a Dragon's Den, just basically what you guys are doing. And they have to pitch for 2 minutes, and then they get, each of the dragons, although I like to call them teddy bears, not that scary really. They all go down the line and they, you know what I mean, they ask questions. And last year, actually, the quietest person in my doco team at the time, like really quiet, was the one who actually won the pitch. So it's an interesting thing to think about. Obviously, it's the story ultimately is the idea, and hopefully the pitch is, getting what you want across. But I think you got to remember the power of your stories is incredibly important. So sometimes you might not be the loudest person in the room, and you might not, I think people are smart enough to see through some of those nerves and things, and just go, actually, your story sings to me. It's got universal themes I can relate, or it's a story that has to be told right now. So don't feel too nervous if you are feeling really about pitching. I actually, to be fair, go down the line with my doco students and give them rescue remedy like baby birds, which is like a homeopathic thing just to relax. They always ask me for shots of tequila, and I'm like, we'll do tequila afterwards, but for now, you're going to focus on telling your stories.
And what about those questions, Sacha and Neil, as well? I mean, this is the thing. You're there, you've got the opportunity to pitch, but also you're going to be asked questions. And some of those questions could be quite challenging.
Yep.
And challenging your project, asking you why this project is worth, funding, why you're doing this project. So it's a good opportunity to maybe work with peers and get challenged with those questions before you go into the room.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think the more you practice it with people and lots of different people, not just people who you think are going to, like your peers, I would be doing it to your family, your friends, as much as you possibly can, and asking them what they would think of. We do a thing too called mind mapping each project, where we take turns to think about, each other's work in terms of what we would like to know as an audience member about that certain subject. So it's just, you know what I mean, trying, because it's amazing. Everyone's got opinions, right? So people will think of all sorts of things. And that's what I mean about, if you're passionate about your story and you know it inside out, then you will be more prepared to answer those questions. And I think sometimes if you don't know, it could be something that you're working on. And that's how, potentially you phrase it like, well, that's actually something that we're investigating at the moment. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah. That's a good one to actually say. Yeah, that's something we're investigating at the moment. Cripes, hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Mental note.
If your project's challenged as well, just be okay. I hear you. Great, thank you. Move on. So you are going to be put in some of those positions sometimes with questions that make you think about what you're doing, and just remember the reason that you're there. Neil, you did steal the limelight with the pup there for a minute, but he's popped off again.
Sorry, Sacha, that was really, really helpful to hear, especially from your perspective. The understanding the topic, because I don't know in general if people who are interested in making documentaries are doing it on a whim. I don't know if they're really into it, or I don't know if there's a particular topic that's inspired them to take a particular route. But I agree with you, Sacha, that understanding what your purpose is. I mean, we talk about this a lot now, the why, but that's really kind of crucial. Why are you doing this? What's your purpose? Why do you think the short story should be told, and why do you think you're the one to tell it? And I think there's a part of Māoridom where you don't talk about yourself too much, but I think there's an aspect when you're presenting that you have to present your best side, and if you're the best person, you need to be open and upfront without being too arrogant with it, but be upfront about why you feel that you're the right person for this, because that piece there could be, and you guys will know more than me, could be the one thing that makes them go, yep, I agree with you, you're the one to do this, because you've already gone through that.
Totally. And if you're the one that's got the access to the people and things too, I think all that, you got to make sure you have lots of that stuff lined up, which I'm assuming at this stage everyone does. Yeah. But in terms of who you're talking to, locations, all those sorts of things are so important that you've got them as best you can sorted. Because I think that gives you, you know what I mean? It shows that you're absolutely serious about what you're doing, and you're here to, you're here to do it.
Yeah, and I think we do. We've got pitches at all various stages. Those that are very, very early stages, starting to even reaching out to connect with producers and move on with those projects to that early stage, to actually having some rough cut story there as well. Is there any from any of our pitch people? Is there any questions at the moment that come to mind that anyone would like to ask of Sacha or Neil? Neil.
Can I ask a question to Sacha? Sacha, when people are coming to you and they're learning the craft, do you feel that often they're doing it because they think it's a career choice? They're doing it because they love the opportunity to tell stories? Well, what do you find are some of the real reasons?
Well, to us, at school we talk about whether you're doing factual or fiction, it's all storytelling. So they're all creators, and they all want a story. They all have stories to tell. Okay, cool. And it's and what I find really interesting is that some of the stuff because the students can choose anything, and we've literally done documentaries on Tripe Club, people who eat tripe. There've been documentaries about pigeons. There's been documentaries about way more serious things like Syrian refugees. We've had all quite a gamut. Wow. And I think what it is that people are curious. I think that's probably the most important thing to say. about, I think, documentary makers and factual, is that we're curious as people about people, and in some ways the the real world is obviously just as scary and delightful and wonderful and puzzling as any written script. And sometimes the people you find in your neighborhood are like way more interesting than you could write, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I think the big thing is that they want to be storytellers, but they're quite, yeah, they're curious about people. And interestingly enough, I think a lot of the younger people, youth of the nation coming through, is that they've been brought up on YouTube, and they're seeing things in a different way to what potentially we did, or what I thought was, what I mean, growing up was being more, formal documentary making and stuff. It's stuff that those lines are all, and the access and stuff is changing.
And they all know how to take pictures of themselves. But so, and I'm sorry to bring up Meg again, but it was just so recent that I learned a lot from her. And through documentary making, there are some that really need to be brave and go into environments like Meg did. Do you find students are heading in that kind of direction?
Some of them are really curious. Actually, I've got a guy today shooting his first short documentary for the year about a graffiti artist who doesn't want his face shown, and they're off to, probably graffiti up a wall illegally. And that's a really fine line, because part of me's like, yeah, let's do it, get the story. And then I'm like, if anyone stops you, don't tell them you're from South Seas. Just pretend you're doing your own YouTube video. But you know what I mean? Like in terms of like taking those risks and stuff. But yeah, I mean, they're only at the very beginning. But it'd be exciting to see where some of them end up, that's for sure.
And I'd be interested to know from anyone listening in if what their purposes are, like what their interest in being part of a documentary or making film like this, and if they've really seen the importance of the bravery. Because I know some have gone into areas where they have been arrested for periods, short periods of time, and all they're trying to do is cover a story. They're not trying to sensationalize, or they're not trying, as I understand, trying to sensationalize it, but they're trying to cover various stories. But so the bravery piece is kind of tough too. It's something that I guess, do we all think about? Or are we just thinking about different types of topics that don't take us into that danger area?
Well,
yeah, I think, when you talk about that thing of putting yourself in dangerous positions, it goes back to that complete passion and drive to tell a story. It's like you just have to tell it. And it's incredible the positions people put themselves in, because it's a story that they just have to tell. And I think if you have that drive, then regardless of, like you're talking about Meg and stuff, regardless, getting knocked back again and again and again, potentially, not saying that's going to happen in this pitching session at all, but you know what I mean? You win some, you lose some, is that you don't give up and you keep going. And I think that's just, that's just and I don't know where that comes from, but I think it's just a storyteller thing.
And that's important, right? Because as we talked about before, it's like if your topic is good yesterday, it's got to be good today. And wanting to continue to pursue that, although if you're not getting funding, that can be really, really difficult.
Really difficult.
So what do people need to do if they're just struggling? If they believe they have everything there and they're just struggling to find any kind of finance to move ahead in their projects?
But people do different things. I've had students do give a little funds, or go fund me, trying to get fundraising in different ways. We've even had barbecues, we've had, raffle tickets. They've done what they've had to do to try. Yep. And some of them have even managed, like family, friends of someone who knows someone who got them a plane ticket down to Christchurch. Do you know what I mean? These are, I know you guys are talking way bigger budgets than that here for this forum, but it is just this thing. I think, it's this thing of being able to hustle a little bit, really, and not give up on it. And I think in some ways people are so lucky, these days, that you can do a lot of your filming yourself and stuff too, if you had to, depending obviously on the story and the style and things. But people are being able to access things on their phones or on a DSLR, or you know what I mean, or
And one of the things I found interesting yesterday was being able to utilize footage from some television networks, especially if they've gotten the footage from elsewhere. Which
just
I
make sure you well, it's funny because, and that thing about rights, when you talk about this, this is such an important thing, I think too, that you know, if you're showing a trailer or anything like that, and it's got music or anything in it, that you make sure you've started to obviously sign off all those rights to use that, because we've had a few students, as Rachel knows, who have put documentaries in and have not actually got the rights to the music that they're playing.
Yeah.
And then you've cut a whole thing to music, you know, the music and the whole, it's not just, you know, there's so many different ways obviously to tell a story. There's your visual, there's your audio, it's your soundscape, it's the music, it's the whole, you know what I mean, the whole gamut. So you want to make sure that you've got all those boxes ticked in terms of being able to use it to tell your story in its completion, because it's a bummer if you go and cut something together, you know how you cut with music is so integral, and we're not to have music and all those things, I think, to then find out that, you know, you didn't actually get those rights that you thought you had, and then you have to recut the whole thing, and it totally changes it, and that's a real pain in the bum.
So for a pitch, there would be a minimum. You'd be looking at what, 3 minutes minimum?
I
So
think
what
they
we're
said you guys have
looking-
got 7,
What we're
eh?
looking at, yes, we've got 7 minutes, and Izzy just asked a question, and Belle, thank you for answering, but let's just delve a little bit more, is if you have a sample video to show what's an ideal length, you've got 7 minutes to pitch, so you got to talk about your project, but it's all dependent on what that sample video is as well. You know, if it's 2 minutes of really strong footage that's really going to delve home, then that's great. But if it's not, if there's only 30, so I'm really making sure that what footage you are showing is getting across your concept, and you're giving yourself enough opportunity to speak to the project as well.
They're showing your capability too, right? With that pitch.
Yeah.
I mean, that is important.
And I think too, obviously your opening statements and stuff are the most important thing. You want to set the scene straight away. You don't want to be like 30 seconds or a minute into your pitch and people still don't know what your story is.
Yeah.
So I think being really upfront as to what it is right at the beginning, and even if it's through a question or setting a scene or imagine, you know what I mean, or something, just to get people, you are telling a story and you're trying to get people engaged. And the only, you know, if you got people's interest, then you'll, you know what I mean, they're more likely to be listening, really listening, because, you know, you are telling a story. So I think that's really important that your
And I
opening
think
is
we
really,
all,
and your ending really strong.
we all love telling stories, and it's figuring out a way. I've told a lot of stories through news stories, but never the length of a full documentary. And I've loved that. I've loved doing what I've done, but the challenge is being able to take it that step further, and winning every award capably possible. So.
True. Yeah.
I think Neil's delving into the world of documentary making. You've got that passion.
Good. Hey, other thing I was going to say too is that, like, in terms of nerves and stuff beforehand, I don't know what people do for nerves and things, but some stuff we try to do for our students, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but we try to get them to do breathing exercises. Because obviously when you get nervous, sometimes our breath goes up into your chest here and you're shallow breathing. And the idea is you got to try not to breathe through your mouth. It's almost like you want to close, like, you know, getting almost into your yoga breathing, in that sense that you breathe in and out through your nose just to calm your nervous system down a little bit. And we do that, you know, there's a breath that you can do that you breathe really slowly in for 4, you hold for 2, and you breathe out for 4, hold for 2. And you just do that a little bit before you even start. And another one we get the students to do is to jump up and down and shake, because a lot of nervous energy comes through, you know what I mean, your body and stuff. And if you're feeling shaky and things, so just trying to shake it out a little bit. Yeah. And learning, I think the thing too about it is to practice and film yourself, or get someone to film you, you know, so you can see what you look like. Because sometimes you're like, you don't realize that you've suddenly got I don't know, a nervous twitch happening on one side, or your hands are over, you know what I mean? You're doing all this kind of stuff. So it's about learning to try and stand, you know, like planting your feet if you're doing it in person, or even if you're sitting and talking, and actually just taking a breath before you even start, and just trying to slow it down and be articulate as best you possibly can. But all that just comes with practice, eh? It's a performance, eh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we all speak a lot faster than we realize that we actually need
And
to.
it's the way we
So
use our
slow it
voice
down.
too. Yeah, it's the way we
Yeah.
use some of sort of start talking like that because they
Yeah.
and then some will sort of go quite high because they're quite nervous. So recording is a great opportunity if people haven't done it before. The other thing I found really interesting when I've been in radio for a while is just that my voice sounded different, because we're used to hearing ourselves in mono. Not disease, but we're used to hearing ourselves in mono, and once we start hearing it from both sides, it just changes a little bit. And so the more we can get, which is why whenever I've got headphones on, I always keep one on, not two, so I can still hear my voice. But I think that's preparing for that and being comfortable doing breathing exercise has to be a benefit to doing any kind of pitch.
Yeah, and the another one we get them to do is, I know it sounds silly, but when you really clench your hands, like clench, 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 and then let them go, and you sit in that moment of feeling that relaxation when you let your hands go, just that kind, like tense up and then just let it go.
That's supposed to be a sending off proteins or something when you tense your body and then you let it go, you feel that good feeling.
Yeah.
Proteins or something. Not a doctor, just call myself one.
And I think the other thing to do too, as I say to my guys, is that the people who are in the room are there because they want to support you. They want to help you. They're there to you know what I mean, to awhi you, which is, a Māori word for, like to support, to tautoko, it's that thing of, you got to trust that they're not out there to trip you up. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be like, what is that show, that Shark Tank, where they all just keep cutting to those shots of everyone just looking really, mean. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Not at dog edge. You'll have people here who are wanting to help you and support you. So you're all starting off on a good foot already.
Yeah, incredibly helpful. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you've already pitched once to actually even get into here. So
that's
there.
Boom.
You're on your way.
Believe in your project already. Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any questions, or anyone wants to talk about their particular project and ask some ideas there? What have we got? Jeremiah, what are examples of docs that you've both connected with on a personal level, and why? Obviously, Neil, you've resonated very recently with the Unredacted, but maybe there's something else that has connected you. Sacha, what's some of the
crikey.
you've seen?
It's terrible when people ask me questions like this. It's like, what's your favorite color or your favorite food? I'm one of these people that goes for lots of things. I'm just trying to think ones that some of my most favorite. The most recent one, obviously seeing Unredacted, was pretty incredible, but it's the human element of a documentary like that, those universal themes that when you go into the humanity of people, that's where I get really excited or connect with, all the slightly quirkier ones, like the one about Iris.
Yeah, or something that makes you question.
It makes you question
your
thoughts and what you thought. And that's what was so amazing about Unredacted, because it's this thing, it's so easy to other people sometimes, you go other or whatever, which is terrible, but even subconsciously when you do it, and this thing of just showing that no matter what, there's always two sides to a story. Do you know what I mean? And that, that human element is what always excites me so much with documentary, but I'll keep thinking about it.
Yeah, you know what I like? I really like a documentary that teaches me something.
Yeah, totally.
It goes to a place that I haven't been. I've been to a lot of places. And speaking of Unredacted, I've not been in an environment, and I would have loved to have been there to hear the words of people that have been in Guantanamo Bay, because that was the Guantanamo Bay. So those are things, when I'm looking at that, I'm going, wow, this, and she's speaking Arabic to them, and she's with them, and I'm trying to read. I mean, I've been on television a long time, and I like to read people, because I think there's good in most people, but sometimes the eyes will give a kind of a different story sometimes, and being able to go into areas that I haven't seen. The documentary on the train surface was another one.
Yeah, cool.
It was tough. It's tough doing this, the kind of thing. And then you're talking to, because in my mind, it feels like sometimes you want to give them some handouts. You want to help them through the process. I guess it's like being on a safari and seeing a little lion being attacked by other lions and wanting to do something to intervene. And so I would feel in some instances, as a documentary or filmmaker, you must feel a little bit like you want to do something, but if you do that, then you're taking away the story.
It's always, I think, and you spoke about Off the Rails, which won Best New Zealand Documentary last year. I think it's always, for me, that documentary was about the journey of those boys and finding out so much about them, and also being able to continue to find out as where they've gone as well. So a documentary that I can go afterwards, I want to find out more. I want to see what that person's doing. I want to see how I can actually assist in this particular difficulty or whatever it may be. So really looking at the impact that can be made as a watcher, as a viewer.
Exactly.
And that's what really inspires me when I'm watching it. I also like to not realize how much time has gone by the time it finishes. That's good for me. It means there was plenty to keep my mind active, to have me thinking, I wonder what they're going to do, I wonder what this, I wonder how, because this is the way I do things. And I guess some of us will just sit back and just enjoy what's there. I have to be thinking constantly how they're going to do this a little bit different.
Yeah, and I also like those documentaries that start off somewhere, like Tickled, for example, which was made by New Zealand, David Farrier, and you go off, you think it's going down one path, and then it just goes off somewhere completely and utterly differently, which is, the joy of, I suppose, that kind of documentary was the fact that he doesn't necessarily know when he started this investigation into this potential, topic, that it ended up being the most bizarre outcome. So it's those elements of surprise too, you know what I mean, when things get revealed.
I don't enjoy. Sorry.
I think that's also what to think about. A lot of filmmakers here, they've got a particular area that they're going to be going down with their pitch, and once they start filming, it can completely deviate into a different avenue.
And it's having the freedom, having the confidence to move with that, right?
And keep coming back to asking what your story is too. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean it has to be told in one way, like learning to be that flexible that you can go, well, this has changed, or I haven't actually thought about this, you know what I mean? And being open to, like you say, be flexible.
I don't enjoy documentaries telling me how to feel. And I think that the best ones don't. I want to be able to work that out on my own. And that could be one way or the other. I could have been for them at the start and then them at the end, or, be feeling, I want to feel the way I want to feel, because we all have different experiences.
It's true.
And if we've got any other questions out there, or any comments that anyone would like to make, feel free to ask away. Now is the time and opportunity for you to do that. Interesting. Muhammad, what not to say in the pitch? Now that's a question there.
Oh, crikey. What I tell my students, I'm trying to think. There's plenty of things. I don't know. I suppose the big thing is making promises you can't keep, thinking that you might be able to make it happen, but deep down it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know I said fake it till you make it, but there's a fine line between promising the world and not being able to deliver it. Because my students have got tripped up a few times. They'll be like, I'm going to do this, and we're going to talk to this person, and of course they get asked the question in the Q&A afterwards. Really, have you spoken to them? Because they're a personal friend. You're like, what?
So they get, that's absolutely saying that we're going to interview this person, we're going to speak to these people, and you actually haven't been in contact. So really making sure that what you are telling is what you can deliver.
And even if it is, like I said, about not necessarily saying we're investigating, but it could be that we're reaching out to, i.e. we're trying to get hold of this person to talk to, but I'm not promising that I'm going to speak to them.
And if we don't, there's another way we can go. Belle, you've got a question there as well.
Yeah, actually. So as coming from someone who doesn't have much experience pitching or presenting in front of many people, especially at high stakes, how do you calm yourself and prepare yourself to come off confident and not freak out and have stage fright?
I think that, I was saying before, I think that thing, if you really know your pitch inside out, then you've got to have confidence that you know it inside out, because you've practiced it lots, so you know it. And you've got to trust yourself a little bit, and then I think that thing of just the breathing and the clenching hands, or the jumping up and down, just really trying, but also allowing yourself, if for some reason you do fluff up, you just take a breath and you start again. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's just really important to try to do that, and to realize that, you're in a safe space. There are people here who are to support you. And just, trust in the process, like feel the fear and do it anyway.
And have you
Hydrate.
as well? Hydrate, because
It's
getting
a
a
good
dry
point.
mouth when you're trying to pitch is one of the worst things. And you're like, oh, so make sure you're being able to have water. You can take that breath when you take a sip of water as well, and just breathing, particularly when you get to question stage. You know, you don't have to answer straight away. You've got that opportunity to hang on, really good question. Let me have a think about that. No, great. You know, giving that just gives you 3 or 4 seconds to be able to think what you're going to say next as well.
Yeah.
Neil,
I think it's confidence. You know, you're presenting for a reason, and by that time you've probably got a fairly good idea on what you're doing. And I think it's at that point where you just have to go in, not confident as in, hey ho, I'm confident, but just, you know, I've got this, I understand it. There may not be everything that I need to understand, but for what I need to do right at this moment, I feel confident. Because confidence, when I started in radio, I just didn't have any idea how nervous I would be. And I literally, my very first time on air, we had records. I don't know if everyone's familiar with a record, but we had records. And I was putting a record across onto the other turntable, and my hand was shaking, and I didn't actually realize that's how nervous I was, because I was trying to exude confidence for me. And so I think just being confident about what your purpose is, there shouldn't be a reason why, you know, and I know that there is nervousness around doing that kind of thing anyway. But when I interview a lot of people now, and when I talk to them, I can see how nervous, some of them are nervous, some of them never been on air before. And I just go, it's you and I having a conversation. And they went, oh. I said, don't worry about the cameras, don't worry about anything else, I'm just going to talk to you, you talk to me, we have a conversation. And I think you just find a point where you can get to, particularly with the topic that you're probably going to be very familiar with, and just go with that kind of confidence and just have a conversation, a bit elevated slightly for a presentation, but have a conversation about the importance of your project.
Yeah, I
and
think
just know what you're talking about. If you know
Well,
what
you
you're
got it,
talking
yeah.
about, then
fine.
that's the first bit to being confident. I've got a question as well, and Alex, if you're there, maybe something that you might want to jump in on as well. But Miriam's asking, can you give us in percentage? We might not be able to give us ideally. How much of the pitch do you dedicate to the storytelling, and how much for production information? So how, you know, where do you actually start delving more into the detail?
Yeah, which is first?
Alex, is that something maybe you could talk to as well?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Look, I think it's all a question of style. I think it's really important at the very beginning, just to go through what I think a pitch presentation should be. If you decide that you're going to have your pitch at the very beginning and have your video to follow, or you could do it any other way, it's still very important for you to be able to, first of all, introduce yourself, introduce what the story is, ask very clearly what it is that you're looking for in terms of what support you're looking for. Are you looking for people that are going to help you with the producing side of it? Are you going to look for sales agents? Are you looking for festival interests? Are you looking for funding? Are you looking for impact production support? I think it's really clear. Make it very clear to everyone, because that makes it easier for people to identify where they can help you with. The other thing that you then have to go on to is to make sure that you make it very clear what it is that you are actually pitching. It's not just about the story, it's also about the type of story. Is it going to be something for film? Is it something that's going to be a web series? Is it going to be a TV series? Is it something that's going to go to theatrical? Is it meant to go and be seen as a personal story? Is it going to be observational story? Is it going to be a point of view story? I mean, make it very clear what it is that you're doing, so that you know, at the very beginning you state, this is what I'm doing, and it's easier for people to follow what it is that you are pitching. From after that, usually what I would expect that you would do is to start to give us a stunning log line, a very, you know, catch your attention. You know, say something that's going to make them wake up and say, hey, I want to follow this person. I want to listen to what it is that this person is going to be talking about. And then go on to talk about what in fact, it's a story behind the log line. Once you've done all of that, that's probably for me is going to be maybe 60 to 70% of your pitch would be about what the story is. The first introduction to yourself should be maybe 10% of your time pitching. And then you need to be able to then talk about who the team is, who it is that you're working with, who's your producer, who's your director. If there's two of you pitching, then make sure that you divide. Someone talks about a story and someone talks about a business side of things. And then I think that you need to talk about what your budget is. I mean, you may not have to be very clear about your budget, but I think it's really good to be able to put give everyone a feel as to whether or not you're pitching a $1 million story, a $600,000 story. You know, have a sense. You know, talk to people if you're not very sure about your budget as to where it is. But if your budget is actually a lower budget, make sure you explain why it is a lower budget. Because one of the things that a lot of decision makers want to know is that, can you make the film? You know, if you're talking about, I'm going to be traveling here and I'm going to go there and I'm going to be on planes, I'm going to meet all these people all around the world, and suddenly say that my pitch is actually the budget is 200,000 New Zealand dollars, everyone's going to look at you and say, how are you going to do that? Because you've got to pay people. You got to pay for your production costs, your post-production costs. You need to be able to ensure that you're covering all the necessary expenses, because no one wants you to do it for free. And no one wants you to suddenly, you know, be in the middle of a production and suddenly run out of money. You need to be able to give some confidence to the people listening to you that you know what you're going to do. I mean, we're not talking about the fact that you got money in the bank right now. We're talking about what it would take you to make the story, you know, so be as honest and be as realistic as possible. And if in fact it's because of, you know, if you're lucky, and Sacha will know that sometimes, you know, you're lucky because you might be, let's say, working at the university, you're working at a training college, and you got the opportunity to take advantage of that and be able to utilize some free equipment. You might be able to utilize, you might have a family member that works in a post-production facility, and they're going to be able to do things at a much lower cost. Explain it. Explain it, because then people know that that's the reason why it's so low. Okay. And then, you know, the important thing is to make sure they know how to get in touch with you. Okay. Because a lot of people, I've been at pitches where people have just gone in and they've done this amazing pitch, and you say, oh my God, this is really great, I want to get in touch with that person. And then the person doesn't leave you any details how to get in touch with you. And it's really important to be able to say, I can be contacted, this is my email, or this is, you know, my production company, and this is how you can get in touch with me.
And you leave that information with the people you're presenting to?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the other thing is to always say, you know, that you're going to have, you will have available your pitch deck. Your pitch deck, if you're not in New Zealand and you're not live, you're going to be able to send it out to people, or you make sure that it's sent out to people. For people that are in New Zealand and you're pitching here, and there's a room for the people that are your decision makers, you can say, I can hand you my business card, I can give you a pitch deck, you know, so that people know that that's available. Does that help, Rachel?
Great, Alex, thank you. Just another question that's come up as well. Sacha, you were talking about Tickled and how, you know, it sort of went down one area and moved to another. One of our guests has asked where the ending is unknown at the outset. Would you just pitch as an exploratory scenario and maybe mention some of the possible places it may go? Or, you know, is that okay without having an outcome of the documentary in the pitch? What are the movers and shakers in the room like with that, Sacha?
I mean, for me, I that would be fine for me, in terms of, as long as you thought of some different possible endings. Do you know what I mean? If you can give some different scenarios, it could possibly go this way or it could go this way. But the joy of the journey is actually the point too. Do you know what I mean? In terms that you don't necessarily know the answers, but the story is strong enough that you're going to have people's attention. Do you know what I mean? And it will have an ending of sorts.
Yeah, there's an ending, but which one it will be depends on the people that you speak to. Yeah, so just talking to that. Alex, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I might just also add to say I totally agree with that. This is a documentary. we're actually not doing a scripted fictional piece.
Yeah.
We are very much dependent on the journey. We're very much dependent on the research, as you discussed. You might start off saying that this is what I think the story is, but actually by the time you start interviewing people, you might find your story has veered off into a particularly different direction. So I think it's important for people to recognize that, you know where you're going, but perhaps the ending is still something to be worked on. In fact, for me, that's part of the joy of being a decision maker as well, is to be able to be party to this journey, to be able to see that, this is something exciting. You're going to be able to find a story, but some of you may already have a very clear idea as to where you're going to take it. So historical, let's say a historical documentary, you know that your narrative is going to go act 1, act 2, act 3. The excitement with a historical documentary, something with archives, is probably the way you're going to put it together. And you need to be able to explain that. But if it's observational, or something that's researched right now, it's going to be driven very much by what's going to happen in the next little while.
For the international pitch, would the judges be attending live if we decide to come to New Zealand to pitch in person? If not, do you have advice on pitching via Zoom that's different than pitching live?
Okay, so with regards to whether or not people will be attending live, there's going to be both people that will be attending and people that won't be in venue, but they'll be attending the pitch live. In terms of they'll be listening to it, and they will be in a hybrid situation. Oh, hello. That's a really cute dog. Is there any way of making sure that you do your best? I think that's why we want you to record your pitch, because I think that you don't need to have to be in a situation where you get nervous. We want you to put your best foot forward. This is a new way of pitching, and I think that in the past everyone says, okay, we want you to be live, and I think the problem with being live is that if you make a mistake, sometimes it can trip you up. And I think that what we want to happen now is for you to have a recorded pitch with your audio visual, and your Q&A is what's going to be live. Is when people ask you, why did you do that? You have an opportunity to respond live in that situation. And I think that's much better, because it gives you a sense of confidence that at least your pitch will be listened to, and your pitch will be something that everyone would be familiar with, because you put your best foot forward, having it recorded. And then the actual Q&A gives you an opportunity to answer the actual questions that come out of that actual presentation.
Yeah. So you're talking about, in this scenario like we're in now, that actually you could push play on your recorded pitch and then come out of it and be there live to answer the Q&A. And particularly also if English is not your first language, that's also a way to assist there as well.
So for those of you that were there yesterday and saw the pitch that I played, which was a shortened pitch by Eleanor Osborne, I Thought Jesus Was Korean. Last year, because there were internationals, we also played something really similar in terms of there was a actual recorded pitch, and then after that she answered questions.
In terms of Q&A, coming out of the comms world and also being in newsrooms when we've gotten press releases. So a press release provides the information. Not everyone can do that very well, because they provide pages and pages of information that most people can't go through. But at the end of that, there's a question and answer. There's a Q&A that you do yourself, where you're asking yourself questions like, where are you getting the funding? What are you expecting? And those things, something that filmmakers utilize to do their pitches by setting a Q&A for themselves, and then asking those types of questions and then coming up with their own answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's always worthwhile, being able to predict what some of the questions might be. And I think that the more you practice, and the more you practice in front of people and get people to ask you questions. I mean, the thing about it, the beauty of actually rehearsing this is that you can actually rehearse the pitch across a whole different groups of people. And you need to ask them, what did you get from the pitch. What was my central journey? You know, what was it that made it memorable for you, and what do you think that I didn't cover? And if you go through rehearsing it to a whole lot of different people, from your having it rehearsed before your partner, before your parents, before your best friend, before people you don't know, is that you get a whole lot of different opinions, and that way you can start to continue to harness and to finesse your story. Rehearsal is really important. And I know that there's a question there. Sorry, Rachel, I see that
That's all right.
Miriam asked about a pitch that was
Yes.
very memorable. Pitches that are memorable to me are pitches that are made by people that don't need notes. Okay. I think that the minute you start seeing that someone is looking and someone is reading, you kind of lose interest. You just need to be as natural as possible, and you need to make sure that you're as always imagine that the person is someone you know. It's a conversation. We don't want to be lectured at. We want to invite you into our home. We're a decision maker. We've got funds. We've got friends. We can have a party for you. You know, tell us why you want to come into our home. You know, why it is that we want to be your friend. You know, so make it personal. You know, smile a lot, crack a joke. You know, be as natural as you can. Don't deliver it without deadpan. Don't deliver it without any emotion. Deliver it, you know, in a very personable way. You know, that's the thing that is most memorable for me, is actually the charisma of the person helps a lot in being able to tell the story.
I like that a lot, because when people start reading things like that to me, all I'm thinking is, you could just give me that piece of paper and I could read that. That's what I've thought in the past. So by putting that piece of paper away, maybe having a look at it beforehand, by putting it away and just speaking to them must, as you said, it makes a difference for you.
How do you encourage your students, Sacha, to create something, or to be able to deliver something that is charming, that is magnetic, that is compelling? I mean, you know, how often do you sit there and say to them, keep rehearsing, keep looking, and maybe recording yourself a number of times and actually watching yourself?
Yep, that's exactly. I was just talking about that before. We really encourage, like you said, about pitching to everyone that you possibly can listen to, practicing in the shower, practicing in the car, recording yourself, seeing how your body language is, whether you're looking at people, connecting with people. Because, you know, we're in the business of telling stories, but it's about human connection, isn't it? So it's this thing of actually making sure that you're getting people, you know, to go on this journey with you, and to be excited to want to. So if you've got this passion and you're, you know, and you're enthusiastic, I think halfway there already. And we, you know, I think you've got a really good point there, Alex, about asking, when you're getting feedback from people, just keep refining your ideas and what, you know, what actually sparks an interest in somebody. I was just saying that we do a lot of mind mapping at school, where we sit and we try and brainstorm each other's ideas, because people have different ways of seeing the same thing. No kidding. But you know what I mean? And in some ways, it's so good as a filmmaker for them to go, oh God, I hadn't thought of it that way before. So, you know, I think the presentation is incredibly important, but I think it's also, you know, being able to have confidence in yourself and knowing your story really well to answer the questions that are going to come back at you as well, and to have that conversation, and, you know, and to be honest, sometimes that you might not know all the answers, but you're going to figure it out, or you're working on it, because I think that sort of thing is good too, because, you know, we're human, and you might not have everything lined up in the world of, you know, this story yet. As we were talking about something like Tickled, you don't necessarily know where it's going to go, but, you know, you've got a good idea. So I think, yeah, when you're passionate and you're excited, people can see it and you believe in it, you know, and that's what you need to do, and show it, you know, like, don't be afraid to show it.
Can I also just add that people want to be persuaded that you are the best person to tell the story. That's really important, because you need to be able to, in your pitch, be able to say, you know, this story is urgent or compelling because of this reason, and I have access, or I'm the best person to tell a story. not necessarily in those words, but you need to be able to say, you know, this is the reason why you need to come on this journey with me, because I am the person that needs to tell the story. It may be because of your personal beliefs. It may be because of something that's happened to you, maybe the access that you have to the story, maybe the fact that no one else had thought of the story before and you're the one that's come up with it, you know. So you need to be able to explain what it is that makes it special to have you as the person helming the story. Sometimes it's because you've got a great team, you've got a great producer, you've got a great writer, you've got a great researcher. You know, you've got interests already from people, from a community that's come to you with a story. So, for example, if I were to say that if you're pitching a story, say about a particular community, maybe it's an Indigenous community, you need to be able to show that there's a connection and that you're speaking with an authentic voice. Because that's really important at the moment. The whole issue about story sovereignty or story authenticity is to make sure that people recognize that even that you are the right person because you've got a connection, so you've got understanding and you've got the ability to be able to take the story from an idea and to deliver it honorably and to be able to ensure that the people and the story are well represented.
That's good.
Thank you, Alex. That's great.
Can I ask Neil a question? Sorry, I'm now going to be asking questions because you opened it up now. You asked me to come back on, and I'm just going to ask questions now. Neil, how apart from a teleprompter, which some people might have the opportunity to have, how do you memorize a script? How do you? I mean, I think this is what some people are going to say to themselves. Oh my God, I've got a 3-minute thing to deliver. How am I going to remember all of that? How would you do that? I mean, what are the ways in which you ensure that you become conversant? Not that you do it word for word. Yeah. For me, it's more or less understanding the structure and understanding parts of it and being able to say it in your own words. But how do you prepare yourself to be able to deliver something?
By using that word, by being prepared and understanding the topic, because very often in my interviews, I'll go off, I'll have a base of questions that I want to talk to someone about. And then from that point, in a live situation, which is what I absolutely love, but because it's a do or die. And so in a live situation, I'll tend to go with how we're connecting. And very often people will say something within that interview that I wasn't going to ask them about, but it's really interesting to me. So I'll start going in that direction, then come back. But I think the most important thing is being prepared, understanding your topic, understanding the person. I do a considerable amount of research. We have a really good team, but I do a considerable amount of research on my own just to make sure, and so that I can be familiar with subjects, so that if electronics and auto cues do go down, I've had the computer go down, and I've had my copy that's been out of sorts, my hard copy, and so I've essentially got nothing, and that's happened a couple of times. So being prepared and understanding your topic and where you want to go with the interview and the kind of information you need, I think is the most crucial.
Rachael, you might want to join in on this one because you're a trained actor as well, and you've done acting roles and everything else like this. I mean, how do you prepare yourself so that you can be dramatic, deliver, be emphatic, to be able to impress people, that you know what you're talking about? I think that you're muted.
I am muted because I was pouring some water. That's right. I think what Neil said about being prepared is really important, particularly if you've read you've read this document over and over and over again, and this is what you're going to say, and you get up there in front of people and you go, I can't actually remember what it was I was going to start with. You should be able to deliver anyway, because of everything that you're passionate about. You're now going to have a conversation. You don't actually have to know a script word by word by word. You're going to have a conversation with these people in front of you, and you know everything there is about that film. There's everything about this project that you want to make. So therefore, it shouldn't be a problem if you need to go off on different tangents, as Neil said, with different directions there. It's definitely different from rehearsing scripts. But that said, you know, I've been in live performances where somebody has forgotten lines, and you do have to make it up on the go. But as long as we know where to get back to in that script, then we're prepared enough in that way. Also think about what Sacha was talking about earlier of just really that whole get rid of the tension and relaxing and just going in, going, I am the best person for this project. I am the right person to deliver this. I'm so passionate about this. I know what I'm talking about. Just really making sure you give yourself that ownership going into it.
I would normally, when I prepare a pitch or any presentation, I would actually write the whole script out. And then I'll start breaking down into parts and slowly keep breaking it down until I got maybe one sentence that represents what I would have talked about in that whole particular paragraph. So then if I have that, even if I don't use anything else, once I've got 5 or 6 sentences that represent kind of where I want to take it, I should be able to talk about it. The other thing that I just wanted to make sure that everyone does is that never apologize for forgetting, because no one knows anything about what you're going to pitch. You never apologize. You never start, oh God, I forgot what I'm going to say. I'm so sorry, guys. Never do that.
Does that happen
Carry on
often?
with the conversation.
Does that happen often?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in live situations, it does. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted you all to be able to record your pitch, because that way we can give you an opportunity to present yourself in the best possible way. But even if you were live pitching, and I don't suggest that you don't, because I think it's very different for those of you who are going to be able to. It's very different to go into a room with a whole lot of people and feel the buzz. The adrenaline rush is huge. And when you see people smiling at you and you feel it in the air, you get really encouraged. You feel inspired. But for those of you that can't be in a live situation, you know, being able to record yourself gives you that opportunity to be confident, to know that you are going to deliver the best possible pitch that you can do. So once again, back to what I was just trying to say, don't apologize if you forget.
Yeah. And also with that recording of the pitch, Alex, is it still important to record it as if it was live and not to edit together lots of different bits and it looks too structured?
Yeah, well, we're not wanting to see you make a film. We're wanting to see you record your pitch. So wherever possible, don't keep editing it and, you know, cut here, cut there, cut here, cut there. It doesn't look good. It's much better, as much as possible, to be as natural in terms of recording it and just being able to just edit it as a full or maybe even just a couple of edits. That's fine. I know that there's a question that Kim has just put up there, and he says, it seems too much practice is never enough. Is your relationship to the subject very important? First of all, Kim, I think that it'll be fair for us to say that in everything that we do, it's never enough. Whether we prepare for a pitch, whether we work on a film, whether we do an edit, it's never enough. There's always something else that you can do, something else that you might have missed out. So I wouldn't sweat it. I would just do the best that you can.
Yeah. And obviously having that the relationship with the subject allows you to talk to that really easily. That relationship with the subject makes that pitch for you a lot simpler and a lot more personable as well.
And,
what about
also
two
with the
people?
subject? So sorry, I was just going to add with the subject situation and with the producer, we're not against there being 2 or 3 people in a pitch. So you could be dividing the pitch up with, hi, I'm Kim Hagen, I'm the producer. Here's my director, and then the director says a few words, and we have actually invited one of the subjects so that you can actually meet the subject. So you can do that as well, because that way people can see that you have a relationship with your subject. I'm not saying that all of you do that, but if you wanted to bring a subject in, as long as the subject doesn't take over the pitch, showing that the subject's there and the subject say, oh man, I really, really love working with Kim. Kim knows what he's doing, and I'm supportive of this. That's great. That's great endorsement.
We've got another question, and this is really a really good one, Kylie, who's an emerging documentary maker and a team of one, and a total L plater of a pitcher. So quite nervous about the questions part. And I suppose we've been talking a lot about that today. And Neil, that your questionnaire sheet sounded like a super helpful document. And I think it is something that we can look at from DocEdge perspective here of all the sorts of questions that you might get asked, and we can definitely put that together for you. But I think, again, if you're actually doing this pitch to people that don't know anything about the documentary world, your family and your friends and things like that, they'll ask questions that you wouldn't have thought about as well. So that's that practicing in front of people to get them to ask those questions will really help you get an understanding. But we can definitely look at some of those generalized questions as well for you.
Sacha, you did mention that you had something that you give out to your students that might potentially assist with that.
Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy. I can send some stuff through to Rachael and to Belle. We've just got some things about querying your pitch and some tips on trying to relax yourself and breathing. And I think, you've alluded to it. I think it's the thing about nerves, of actually recognizing that nerves actually are a good thing, because if you're nervous, it means you've got the intention is right. Do you know what I mean? I think you need to worry if you don't get nervous, to be honest. If you're so au fait with everything, do you know what I mean, that you think you've got it completely now, that's generally when we trip up. So I actually think nerves are good. So you've got to remind yourself of that. That means you care. And if you care, you're on the right path. So use your nerves to you know what I mean, recognize and try and separate yourself out a little bit. Go, oh yeah, I feel nervous, and that's a good thing, but I'm in control because I've practiced. I know what I'm going to do. I'm here. These people are here to help me. I'm going to, put my best foot forward. They're not up here to trip me up. I'm just, going to give it a go, my best go. And that's enough for this stage, I think.
One of the things that it's also important that Sacha mentioned earlier is that someone might actually ask you a question and you don't have an answer. And I think that it's really important, not to budget. If it's something that they have raised that you've never talked about, say, thank you so much for the question. That is a really interesting point. I will look at it, and I'm quite happy to talk to you about this afterwards. So, keep engaging with the decision makers, because there's an opportunity for them to recognize that you do have, you will have the resources or the time to examine that. As that's something that's quite important, because, recognize the importance of the question, recognize the value it's going to bring to you, even though you may not have an answer yet.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Alex. It's saying that the question is really valuable. It's really important that you hadn't considered that before, and that you would like to take that away and really consider that as part of the question and conversation later. So I know I can see the talking of shaking in the boots about the industry type questions. They're not ogres, they're not dragons, as Sacha said. They're real people, and they've been real documentary makers themselves, and they've been there also. We've got someone there that's got their hand up. I'll bring you in, Izzy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, all right. I wanted to get just a little clarity on the format for the international pitch, because I'm working out logistics and raising funds, and think I'm very likely to be able to come in person, because I do like the idea of being able to meet people live and network. But as I'm trying to understand, is it all going to be recorded and on Zoom? So even if I come all the way to New Zealand, and am I just going to be pitching in a hotel room? So I'm trying to understand the logistics of it.
No, not at all. We're actually having live pitches here for those people that are in New Zealand and those people that are able to come. But
great.
Those people that can't get to New Zealand, then there's an opportunity for them to deliver it. So we're making sure that it is a situation where we're going to facilitate people that can't attend, but we want to encourage people that can attend to be here.
Oh, great.
Izzy, as well, it's all at the same time as our festival. So we've got a forum happening on the Friday and Saturday afterwards, and we've also got a lot of international filmmakers in town. So it is a great networking opportunity. Time to come to New Zealand as well.
Oh, great. I'm excited to hear that, because I've been trying very hard to make sure my schedule and find the funding. And then wasn't sure if everything then would end up being digital. So this is very exciting. Thank you.
Mahmoud, you asked about one-on-one meetings, and certainly we will be assisting with the filmmakers and the decision makers to get together. A lot of it's going to be based on availability. And last year we found that some decision makers couldn't do a one-on-one straight after the pitch, but they made themselves available over the period of maybe 1 or 2 weeks to be able to have a one-on-one meeting. One of the difficulties that sometimes you will find is because internationals are living in different time zones. It's really important to recognize that sometimes the need is to be able to give some flexibility for people to meet each other outside a very strict time zone. And that's why we would try to encourage people to make arrangements by contacting each other. So we will try to facilitate that. But those that can and are able to do one-on-ones at particular times, we will help to facilitate that as well. I hope that answers your question, Mahmoud.
Great. Alex, is there anything else about the actual pitch day that we haven't sort of addressed? Anything we've talked about the 7 minutes in length there, what's happening in person, what's happening for those that are zooming in? Has anyone else got any other questions about the actual pitch itself that we haven't addressed today?
So all I need to say is that the actual 7 minutes is divided as you would like. You can pitch at the beginning, you can play your video first, you can play your video in the middle, you can decide what is the best way to be able to get your story together. I've seen people where they have a producer pitch at the beginning, and then you have the actual pitch itself, then a filmmaker comes on as a director. It has also been a situation where I've seen only the director pitch, and then the director would pitch first, and the director would then play the video and then answer questions afterward. There's a certain degree of flexibility depending on how you want to pitch it and what you think is the most effective way for you to be able to communicate your story and your project to the decision makers. And when you talk to your mentors, you can talk to your mentors about that, and you can experiment with the different ways in which it would be different.
And Kim's wanting to know, what date do they need to submit trailers and teasers? Is there a deadline at all for that? Belle, Alex?
Personally, I prefer receiving it at the latest, maybe May 30th or May 29th. In between those days, that'd be amazing. So I can make sure to be off guarded and, go through it and make sure everything works out. So
yeah, so we can get some practice and make sure that there's no technical problems. Great.
And as you go and talk to your mentors and you start to rehearse, you might want to keep tweaking your pitch. And so therefore, what we want to do is to make sure that you have enough time. So I think what Belle is trying to say is that it would be great to get your pitch as soon as you're able to, and take the opportunity of having this extended time to be able to create something that is meaningful for yourself.
Yeah, so we're starting to get some sort of nitty-gritty questions about the day coming through, what sort of technology, etc. So, look, I think it's a great opportunity to be there for the whole day if you want to, but also coming in just for your pitch is fine. We do have a good sound system, projectors, the opportunity for you to have all of your presentations go up on the big screen as well. So Belle will definitely be all over that, Kim, to make that all happen for you. And Evelyn, if you're only able to come in for yours, but it's always great to be there to see what else is going on, and to have that challenge as well. Alex, thoughts there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add is that this is not going to be the first and last time you pitch. And it's very important to take the opportunity to actually be at the pitch, to be able to watch other people, to be able to listen to decision makers, and to be able to take that away as a learning tool for yourself. So I would suggest to you that it's important to be there as much as you can for the entire 2 sessions.
So there could be an audience for your pitch?
There will be an audience, but the audiences are people that are actually other pitchees and other people that might be attending the forum. So it's always going to be designed that way. There was a question by Izzy about music. Look, it's a pitch. It's just like Getty Images. You can use things for the purpose of your pitch. You know, if you were to be utilizing a very well-known song, like what the pitch yesterday that you would have seen by Eleanor Osborne, she used the song Moonshadow by Cat Stevens. That's fine, because it's really it's actually utilized in the pitch situation, is not being put out there into the wider world. So we're happy for you to use music that you find might be able to, I suppose, further the story. Maybe it gives the emphasis that you're looking for. So don't be too worried about that.
It's fantastic. It's been
Gonna
really
be an
good,
audience.
actually. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Well, one thing I just want to reiterate what Alex just said about being there on the day and watching other people pitch. When we had a student of ours actually come to pitch in 2017, and she actually won the pitch that year, which was incredible, Jazz Thornton. She pitched last, and she said she actually changed her whole pitch on the spot, which is pretty out of a thing to be able to do, but also she's a very articulate public speaker. She's used to being able to do that, and she also knew her subject incredibly well, and she was very much the right person to tell that story. But she said she actually changed her pitch around a bit simply because of the answers and the questions that were going back and forth between the judges and the pitchers themselves before her one. So she realized some of the way that she'd structured hers, you know what I mean, wasn't as strong as it possibly could be. So I thought that was quite interesting that she said that. I was like, my God, you're very brave, and it obviously paid off. But there is something to be said for sitting there and listening to how everyone else is doing and the feedback people are getting. It's a good learning.
Absolutely. And as Alex said, this won't be your first and only pitch. So learning as we go and asking those questions and seeing what our peers are doing is always very helpful. And
Yep.
Neil, yes, you did. There's an audience.
Yeah, the audience thing is kind of interesting, because I presume that it was just like a job interview almost, where it's just you and the person, but having other people around adds that extra element of nervousness, I guess. Interesting also to note that within the pitch, you can use whatever music you like. It doesn't have to be the music that you've gotten the rights to just at the moment, and also bringing in the subject. If there's the capability to bring in someone without them taking over, to bring in someone to help move your case and to help support your pitch, I think that's a great opportunity as well.
Alex.
Yeah, I think that the times that I've seen that it's worked really well is particularly when you're dealing with subjects and communities that are marginalized, and actually to be able to bring them on board is actually a really strong testament to what the story can actually bring to that community. So I think that that's a useful time to use it. So whether it's Indigenous community, maybe someone that a particular community doesn't have a voice that needs to be represented, it gives the emphasis on why it is urgent, why it's critical to be able to tell the story. And in other instances, people bought props. I mean, I can say to you that one year with someone telling a story about breast cancer and about women that kayak to be able to support work to be done, or funding or support for women that are suffering from breast cancer. And she walked in with a kayak. And the whole room just suddenly stopped and saw, look, oh gosh, there's a huge kayak coming in. But it was a talking point, and everyone talked about it, because, you need to make your story memorable. You need to make your pitch memorable. It's whether you have an opening line, whether you make them laugh, whether you bring a prop in, whether you bring a subject in. This is all about trying to make sure that people remember you after the pitch.
Yeah, true. It's not about being word perfect and having it all down, because that's not memorable. Yeah, something a little bit out there, different. Neil.
If for those that have won their pitch over the years and they're okay with it, would you ever consider putting that into a small show reel, if you like, for people who might want to see it, to see how successful they've been and why?
That's a really great idea, and I think that is very much dependent on whether or not we get the permission of those filmmakers, because some of them may already think that they're gone way past that, and they don't really want to be reminded of that particular stage in their lives. But there are some people that see the merit of being able to provide tools and to support for other people. So yes, we will definitely be looking at that. And any of you that once we recorded your pitches or you have provided us with a recorded pitch, if you can tell us that you don't mind it being shown to other people, that would be great, because then we can use that in the future for other people. Can I say that think about voice, and I'm sure that Neil or Rachel or Sacha, think about the voice that you use. You can talk like this, or you can talk like this. You can give a certain depth to your voice. I mean, one of the things that we had last night was when we were talking about Iggy in Love, and you heard the voice of Tom Burston, and he spoke softly, and he gave breath to his conversation, and immediately you felt the warmth. You felt the need to be part of that conversation. So think about your voice. Voice is really important. Don't speak in one voice. Don't shout. Think about the different levels. Think about why it's important to you. Then the type of voice you use is going to change. Sacha, I'm sure you would want to. You might say something about this. Yeah.
I agree. You are telling a story. I think that's probably a good way to think about it a little bit, in terms of it being a performance to a degree. It's that thing of, like you say, you're taking someone on a journey. And when we spoke a lot before about trying to learn, that we all get a bit nervous and we all talk fast. I know I do. So it's that thing of trying to slow things down. And so making sure that people are able to actually hear what you're saying, because you might be saying the best pitch, but if it's really, really fast, no one understands what you're saying and everyone's going, what? At the end, what's the point? So yeah, I think it's really important to have a bit of shape to your pitch, in terms of, like you said, when to take a breath, when to let things sit too. Like if there's if you've got a really important point to make, or if you're opening your pitch with a potential question, or you're setting up a scenario, give people a chance to actually think about what you're asking them to do, as opposed to going on to your next thing. Let things sit and resonate a little bit. I always find those ones really powerful, when you're not trying to fill in the space all the time. Fine line between that, having a gap, and like crickets and tumbleweeds, don't want to leave them hanging for too long, but shape it.
Hey, Neil, and I was going to come to you, because there is an authoritative voice. There is the voice of God. There's also the voice that you want to try to bring people into something that's intimate, that needs people to feel that they're being talked nicely to bring them into the conversation. So that's probably something that you had to use and learn over the many years that you've been in broadcasting. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, it's the light and shade. It's whatever's fit for purpose. It's for example, you can't be talking about with a joyous voice going, oh, guess what, Johnny died today, and he's going to be, we're going to blah blah blah. Sometimes it's about understanding what is fit for purpose. If you're talking about the kind of a somber event, then you bring it back. It doesn't. When I started in radio, you had to project, and that's not a thing you have to do nowadays. And so that's one of the things I struggled going from radio to television, is you had a microphone here rather than over here. And so coming from radio, you had to always push the voice up, because the microphones in that setup needed that, to hear that strength in your voice. So when I've done various stories, depending on the story, now I just like to come right back and just be who I am and just talk. Talk not with boredom in my voice, but to talk so that I'm interested in what I'm talking about as well. And it's the light and shade. It's fit for purpose, whatever is the right thing. And very often when people haven't gone through all that kind of training, it's actually just being you. It's just being yourself, and just, because not everyone's got a deep voice, not everyone's, got the kind of voice that they've had trained. And if you don't, I think it sounds amazing when people just are talking and being them. There's another thing that I was going to mention about the, When I've interviewed people, and this could be something people might be aware of, or might need to be aware of, when they realize it's almost the end of the interview and they start to throw a whole lot of information in. So if you get into that 7 minute and you just go, I've got to get this in because I've talked about this and I've got to get this and I've got to go. I feel it's more important. Less is more. Just give what's needed. If you miss out on something, that's okay, because hopefully what you've done in that 7 minutes has been more than enough. You're strong in the meat and strong out, and just finish it off. But I have found some people try to throw so much information at the end. I'm looking at them thinking, I don't even remember what you've just said. And so it's not about ticking boxes and saying every little thing you intended to say. Sometimes it's about giving the right information at the right time.
Yeah, can I answer that? Because I think that's so true, Neil, because I say that with my students. And because really there's an opportunity to, potentially talk more when it comes to the Q&A afterwards anyway. That's when you could potentially, bring something up and have those extra details, put them in that space as opposed to trying to cram it all in your pitch. Yeah, it's good advice.
Points.
And people do that a lot. And I'm not sure if they do that in their pitches, but I'm sure that some might consider at some stage, oh, I didn't talk about this. Oh, I didn't talk about this. And then when I finish the interview, if I get to talk to people, they go, oh, I meant to say. I say, that's fine. Because sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
I think
in our live pitches as well, that you will have a microphone for those that haven't used one before. There'll be an opportunity to have a bit of practice before. So
I was just going to also add is that everyone in that room is willing you to succeed. No one's there wanting you to fail. So they're your friends. They're people that are there because they believe in the importance of storytelling. They want to find the next big story. They want to find something that they can support. So you shouldn't feel nervous. You should feel emboldened. You should feel encouraged by them being there. And use that as a way to inspire yourself to deliver the best possible pitch that you can.
Absolutely. And, by being part of this, we at Doc Edge have already recognised that there is something special about each and every one of your projects, and that there is a reason that we want them to be heard. So go in with that confidence as well. Alex, with regards to the questions that happens afterwards, is there a sort of a limit? Or the team sort of cut off there at all at any point in time, or how many questions should people expect to be doing in that Q&A time?
So you have 7 minutes to deliver your pitch and your audiovisual supporting material. You have 8 minutes after that to actually engage in Q&As. My suggestion to you is don't overtalk. Try to be as precise as possible. If you have more information, you can invite them to have a conversation with you, because what you want to do is to have at least 3 to 4 questions over that period of time that will allow you to elongate your pitch. But what I find that sometimes is that I've seen in some pitches, people get really talkative, and you can have one question and they take the whole 8 minutes. And at the end of the day, you've got other people wanting to ask questions, but they don't get an opportunity. So try to make sure that you provide concise, sharp answers. And then, if in fact you find that people don't have any other questions, that's fine. Talk a bit more. But make sure that you give enough time for people to ask questions.
That's really good to know, not to try and answer it 5 different ways.
And my thing is be precise, be concise, and be clear.